Hey everyone, Cricket here, doing weekly in-depth Gwent guides chosen by the community to help you reach your goals in Gwent. Last week you requested some Moonlight action, so I went over to the Team Archetypes homepage, to the meta snapshot, and took the deck from there, and then I dug right into it. We are looking at the card and deck list and mulligan guide, the general gameplay plan of the deck, how to play against each matchup, and an example match. If you're interested in more deck lists like this one, then head over to the Team Archetypes homepage and check out the meta snapshot. Subscribe if you like what I'm doing, and if you're interested in voting for next week's deck, then you can do that just by leaving a comment down below. And now, let's head right into it. The idea of the deck is to put as many boons and hazards onto the battlefield as possible, and then play as long as possible to get the most benefit. Through Moonlight, you can either spawn Full Moon on our side as a boon, triggering synergies of friendly cards while boosting one random beast vampire by 2 at the start of every turn, or we can spawn Blood Moon on the enemy side, dealing 2 damage to a creature when it enters the Blood Moon. To get Moonlight onto the board, we have Sirens, which pull a Moonlight card from the deck and play it, Nekorat, who can either spawn Full or Blood Moon, and Twist Telekinesis, who can create another Moonlight card for us, as well as Reconnaissance if we need it. Werewolves buff themselves by 7 on the first contact with Full Moon, making them a 14-point play, and besides, they are immune to single target spells and abilities like Mandrake, Viper, Witches and more, but Scorch, Igni, Villain Treadmorph and co can still hit it. If we need tempo, then we play Werewolf. We have 3 Foglets in our deck, which jump out of the deck every time Fog is deployed on the enemy side of the board. To do that, we can either use our leader Dagon, Veddermeka, or we can use a Bridge Troll to relocate an already existing Fog to another row, which also counts as applying Fog. Foglets are an excellent thinning and tempo tool because it makes our Dagon a 14-point play, Veddermeka a 10-point play and Bridge Troll a 14-point play, in addition to the weather damage that will tick from then on. Having 3 Foglets in the deck also increases their blacklisting value. Osrail can consume a bronze or silver unit from your or the enemy's graveyard, getting you a big chunk of points most of the time, but it can also be used to deny the enemy a resurrection target. Visper's Tribute can pull as Mandrake or Monster Nest. Mandrake is never bad to have since it can deny critical cards of the opponent and typically is worth a ton of points. Monster Nest is a sound card because it gives us options. We can go with Babargazi to get carry over if we are behind. We can use Drowners to pull enemies into the Blood Moon. Ancient Foglets get us 1 point per round as long as Fog is on the board, and so on. All good options. Frightener enables us to counter-spy and to move enemies back into weather. Caretaker is another card to deny the enemy a resurrection target and enables us to get even more points onto the board. Last but not least, we have Miruna, which is a high risk and high reward card. If you don't like her, you could replace her with Muzzle for example, but personally I think she's an excellent addition to the deck. After 2 turns, Miruna jumps the highest enemy on the same row, often creating insane point spikes. However, since she only has 4 power, she can be removed very easily. If you have secured card advantage or you still have a Frightener, then you can play her without opposition, so always try to go for that. About the mulligan. Cards you want to keep are your Golds, Frightener, Veddermeka, Werewolf, Siren and the Bridge Troll. Cards you want to get rid of are all Foglets, all Moonlights and Mandrake or Monster Nest if you have Whispers on hand. Always start blacklisting either Foglet or Moonlight, and always start with the one of which you have fewer copies in hand to get the full blacklisting value. Typically, we want to play the deck like this. We always play into round 1, regardless of the color of the coin, because we could draw Foglets or Moonlights in the round 2 mulligan. Also, we have cards like Osrail and Caretaker, which require units in the graveyard. The goal of round 1 is to overwhelm the enemy with points to take card advantage, but also get as many Foglets out of the deck as possible, therefore improving our further mulligans. On blue, we start with Siren and establish Full Moon. On red, we start off with Dagon or Veddermeka to get Fog and Foglet onto the board. If the enemy row stacks, then we use Werewolves to get some tempo on the board, otherwise we can use Bridge Troll or Veddermeka to get more Foglets onto the board. Try to establish a feeling for how much weather a round can take. The guideline: if you think the round will be longer, then put more weather onto the board, but it's always good to have 2 Moonlights in reserve, best through Nekorat and Triss, because enemies can override our weather with the hazards in round 3. If we would rely only on 1 Moonlight to trigger our Werewolves, then we might have a problem. But don't forget, you can play werewolves as 7-point units and apply the Moonlight afterwards. They still get boosted, and even if they override the full moon with a hazard, then the werewolf is still played for the full value. In a long run free, we develop our weather and use werewolves for tempo and as fillers, while the weather does the work for us. In a short run free, we want to have cards like Osrael and Caretaker who are able to generate a lot of value on their own. When you're down 2 cards, you want to play Miruna into the row that will contain the highest enemy unit when you're out of cards, so Miruna can get you the big point spike. If you have Frightener and Miruna in hand in the last round's mulligan and you have won round 1, then don't get rid of Frightener and use it to gain card advantage. This way, you can play Miruna after the opponent already have played all their cards, guaranteeing Miruna to stick to the board. Depending on the matchups, we need to play a bit differently. Greatswords. Fog will hit a Greatsword from time to time, but there's not really much we can do except using a bridge roll to relocate it onto a row where Longship and Greatsword have wider point gap in between. Therefore, don't hesitate and get weather out as soon as there is a ship ticking to get foglets out and benefit from most of the fog ticks. Your win condition is Osrael and Caretaker, so try to snag a Greatsword at the beginning of round 2 and 3 to get a ton of points and to deny them value. Miruna can charm the remaining last Greatsword in round 2 or 3 as well. Coral can't target her, and the only other denial is Mandrake, so as soon as you see it played, Miruna will be safe. Veterans. Use Osrael and Caretaker to mess with the graveyard and try to deny them Spear Maiden, Freya and restore targets. Even if you can't deny anything, you can steal the highest units. They typically have no weather clear, so the longer the round is, the higher is the chance that they will prevail against them. Miruna won't find that much value, and hunters can make quick work of her, so only keep her if you think she will give you value. AXEMEN. The good thing about Full Moon is that it overrides enemy hazards. The sad thing is that it can be overridden by enemy hazards. Therefore, wait with your Moonlights until you see Gold Weather or Skellige Storm played, so you can override it with your own Moonlight. Mandrake and Miruna can turn the tide of the match in round 3, and Caretaker can steal the Darren from the graveyard before they are able to resurrect it with Sigtarifa. Swap SCOIATAEL. They can only use either to remove weather, so expect that it will stick. And don't be afraid of a long round, even though they can buff their elves. When there are a lot of elves on the board, spawn Blood Moon and use Bridge Roll to move it around the board, hitting for a ton of value. Be aware that Ida and the Glaze can override your boons, so in a shorter round 3, play werewolves before you deploy Moonlight or your werewolves won't buff themselves. Nilfgaard hand buff. They can't deal with your weather, but they will put a ton of points on the board. Therefore establish weather early to get the maximum value out of it. Use Caretaker to steal Spotter from the graveyard, use Miruna to take the highest unit, and use Mandrake to deny another one of the spotters or buff that units. Try to use those cards in round 3 to shut down your enemy, while you use Bridge Roll, Stagan, Siren, etc. in round 1 to thin your deck. Alchemy. Establish Moonlight with Sirens, but play Werewolves right after that, so Full Moon has a 50% chance to tick on the Werewolf, which can't be targeted by the Witches. Like hand buff, they have no way to deal with your weather, so get the weather out and let it do the work for you. Use Mandrake on the Calvate to prevent Kahir, and utilize Caretaker and Oswald to prevent the Witches from being resurrected. Those might not be too much value in points ASP, but it will prevent a lot of value in the future, and Miruna's survival chances rise drastically. Soldiers. Slave infantries will always spawn in at least one of your hazards. Establishing Blood Moon is a good idea, especially when you move it with Bridge Roll for additional value. Caretaker and Osrael can steal the slave infantries from the graveyard before round 3 to prevent their second setup, and if they play with Alba Cavalry, then they can use Mandrake to remove their buff. DEATHWISH. Apply Blood Moon on rows with Dao to make the Griffin combo less useful, and with a little outburst of joy every time the Archetypes jumps into the Blood Moon over and over again. Full Moon can be overridden with the Dagon and Woodland Spirit, so play Werewolves first, and only then use Full Moon, or the value could be denied. Caretaker and Oswald can take care of resurrection targets for Brewers by stealing Archespores, for example. Miruna will have a hard time because of the Cyclops, so depending on your hand and if you have card advantage, decide in the round 3 mulligan if it would be safer to mulligan her away. Moonlight. This will be a weather battle, so establish your werewolves before playing Sirens. If they apply weather, override it with your weather, especially Blood Moon is useful, because it already deals its damage on application, it's pretty likely that it will be overridden again. If you manage to get your foglets out in round 1 and the enemy doesn't, then you have an advantage in the mulligan. And now, as always, let's look at an example match.
If it's peace you desire, prepare for war.
If it's peace you desire. I really like his slang. Okay, let's see. We don't have a foglet, so we blacklist the Moonlight. As Maruna, it's good. We could mulligan one more without the risk of foglet. We have like a lot of sirens. We have a lot of Moonlight here, look at this. We can use bridge trolls to get foglets out, so that's fine. Do we keep this? I mean, like the neck red is like really too much, but hey. Let's see if we are on blue or red. We want to play into the round. Not sure how we can manage to get rid of his mangonels. Because his initial push will overwhelm us for sure. Let's see. Good thing is, if he uses Drought or Karate Heat Wave, how it's called now, we actually have stuff to override it. Okay, that's good. So we start off with Dagon immediately. Get that foglet out the deck, making future mulligans a bit easier. Let's see if there's a mangonel.
You will pay.
Yeah, there we go.
You all will pay.
I don't think I'll play Moonlight. I think I'll just use the bridge troll here. And get another foglet out. There we go. I wanna pass after he plays his initial reveal push. Yeah, there we go. So that's where I'll pass. And if he goes a long round, then that's fine for me because of all sirens. And I made the risk for getting foglets already a bit. Like, I diminished the risk, so that's good for me. And we don't want to get into minus 20% points, so we pass. We have one card up, it's fine for me. And if better, we need to contest a long round. So that should be fine. Now let's see. Frightener is also really good here. That's the foglet we don't want to have. We may draw into Moonlight now. Okay, we didn't. Perfect. But the chance was there. That's why it was so important to get the Moonlights out of the deck in round 1 with the Bridge Troll and the Dagon. And now let's see. We have one more way to get Foglet out, which is Vedamakar. Let's see what he's doing right now. Does he set up another mangonel?
If anyone
no,
asks,
okay.
You've not seen me.
So we just play Siren.
Come to me.
He may now use the Scorpion to kill it.
Greetings.
There you go.
What is it?
But it's not a bad thing. We can just use a werewolf here. We can't kill the werewolf. And if he passes, we just play another werewolf and take the round. So it's fine. But then we fin more Moonlight out of the deck with another Siren. Depends really like what he's playing with. Okay, that's good for him.
Come to me.
He can now play another Mangonel again, but if Scorpion again. But if that happens, we just play another Werewolf into here, and then we again have better ticking, so that's fine. And then we maybe try to get the Frightener onto the graveyard so we can use the ghoul on it. There you go. Actually, is there already something? 7, 10, like 15-point play would actually be enough because of the 2 better ticks, so that's fine.
The Empire brings progress.
It doesn't even
advances civilization.
It's interesting that it doesn't close my cards because he could do that to, you know, diminish my points. But hey. So the thing is, do we spawn another Moonlight? Because he could go out of the round at any time. Or we just go for Osrel. Osrel, I mean, the thing is, like, double Scourge is really a problem, so we couldn't even think of Mandraking, where we can't even target it, right? So Osrel is 15. It's right in between there, so everything is nicely staggered here. There's Cantarella's, you can use Frighten as well. just pull it here so we can use maybe an offensive Moonlight. We'll see.
No one can hide from me.
So there we go. I think we pull the Mangonel in here. Foglet is something we didn't want to draw, but hey. We can just drop it now, and then we are on equal cards, which is fine. We have 2 more Moonlights. We need to see that we don't draw into it now. Miruna is like... It's very dangerous to keep Miruna here. I'm not sure if we get a chance for Vladimir Covet. I don't want a mulligan here as well, because we could always run into the Moonlight. As I don't have Triss, which is kind of meh. But this gives me Fog, which I can play like the Ancient Foglet on, for example. Well, let's get the Moonlight out here.
You wouldn't want to hurt us, would you?
I'll play 1 offensive Moonlight probably, just for Bridge Troll to move around. Yeah. That was kind of expected. We could play the... On the other hand, I just want to play the Fog now.
Now, how did that incantation go?
Well, in this case, we actually don't need to play the Fog. We could also play Frost, for example. So Miruna actually gets better targets. And you can also use the Bridge Troll to move that, for example, if you want to. We'll see. Fog would have been better because of the Ancient Foglet, but we can use Drowner to move something into the Frost, which is fine as well. I think we just spawned the Blood Moon now, and we can always spawn a Drowner after. It's of course not optimal, point-wise of course, but hey. Question is, do we Mandrake or do we Monster Nest? In this case, currently Monster Nest is way better. He actually plays into the Blood Moon, that's interesting. Well, Drowner makes the most sense, I guess. I mean, on the other hand, we also have Cantrell to eat with the Ghoul. So let's eat the Ghoul, actually. And let's get the Cantrell there. He, of course, was Scorch. So that's kind of a given. So probably would have been better to just drown here. Sure. I mean, that was kind of expected. This will be destroyed. On the other hand, he doesn't have a Fire Scorpion left. Sure. Well, Scorch with Bridge Troll, that's kind of certain. But the good thing is we can at least move the Frost in here. So it will take for some value. And then the question is if this is enough or not. It's basically 20 points if I get it. So it would be 24 points ahead currently. If he can't kill Miruna. There we go. Nice. Don't forget to vote on next week's deck guide by leaving a comment down below and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. If you're interested in more Gwent content or deck guides, then I got you covered. Just check out the videos over here. Thanks for watching and see you over there.